Hi, and welcome to the Messed Up Counsellor. Um, my name's Ian Wallace. I've been a counsellor now for 27 years, and what I'd like to do today is just have a time with you talking about separation and divorce. A lot of my work with couples is around all sorts of life's conflicts and changes, and how couples can change and change together so that they understand what the other person's going through. When it comes down to separation and divorce with couple work, then the role that I have tends to change in a sense that when I'm working with a couple to make the relationship better, then obviously we're processing things to make everybody understand each other and to get more connected and more committed and more enjoyable and make life pleasant and have a great time. When we're looking at separation and divorce, it's a slightly different process in a sense that we're still looking for communication and understanding, but we're also looking to effectively have an amicable separation. That's not easy, because usually the reason why people want to separate or get divorced is because some things happened, some conflicts happened, some situations happened that they can't really get over. They can't put it behind them. So they see the only way is to leave, is to separate. When we're working with that, then we're trying to look for the best way to do that. And that's, as I said, is not easy because of this conflict or this situation that's occurring. Now, when the couple are just a couple and they have no family and no children, then that's sometimes an easier process in a sense that people can just separate, divorce, move out, and they will naturally disengage from friends maybe they had together, or people that the other partner knew, things that they did. So they just move away from each other, which is sometimes a lot easier. Still painful, obviously, because usually it's at a point where both people don't want to separate or divorce. One person does, the other person probably is not wanting to do so. So one person is leading that process, making that choice and decision, and the other person is having to put up with it, basically. So when we move through that process, when we're looking at families, we're looking at children being involved, then it becomes a lot more complex, because people then start wanting to separate, wanting to go away from each other, move away from each other. Usually there might be some commitments such as houses or items that have to be separated, organised to share in some way, shape or form. And it comes down to that process, which is the bits and pieces of the relationship, the items, the houses, the cars, the dogs, the kids. And when it becomes the kids, then obviously that creates a major problem for the unit, the family. So when we're talking about separation divorce, we have to really start to look at a different way of working as counsellors. We have to look at trying to separate for the sake of the children and the family. So the reason why they want to separate actually becomes less important. The separation becomes the process. And so we say to couples, clients, that we're going to do this for the benefit of the children, of the family. And it doesn't matter whether the children are children or adults, it still has the same repercussions, usually. Because then the children have to basically make choices, and they don't have any choice. It's been done to them. Their family has been split, and they have no choice in that process because their parents have decided that they don't want to be together anymore. So when it's children, we do tend to work differently as couple counsellors. So in sharing this with you today, hopefully I can give you some ideas, some direction as to what might be the best way to do that for the sake of the children, because they don't have the choice, as I've said. and they don't really want this to happen. And they will be actively attacking the parental figures, one or the other, and in order to try and make the world safe again, because this world is going to be unsafe for them, and it's going to be a very insecure process for them. And that process means that they will have to make some kind of behavioural noises to get their point across. So you might get unruly kids, you might get challenging kids, you might get challenging behaviour from kids. And all they're trying to do is tell you, in a sense, that they're hurting. They don't want this. They don't want this to happen. They want it to be the way it was. And usually, certainly if they're young children, they'll keep wanting to do that long after the separation and divorce. They'll get involved in new partners maybe, new families, and they'll create disturbances because they're going from one parental figure to another usually, some time spent with each, usually more with one than the other. And that process means that they're going to be dipping back into each other's families, and they're going to be bringing that grief back with them every time they visit, every time they come in. So if you can get it right at the beginning, it makes it less of a problem later on. So when you're looking at separation and divorce, always, always, always think about what you do, how you do what you do affects the children. It's not about you anymore. It's not about your pain and your suffering, your angst, about why this is happening. It's about the children, and it's about how you are now, both parents usually, are going to impact on those kids, and how that message is going to get taken into their world, their life as they grow up and they have relationships. Because whatever you give them is the world. They're not born with the world. You give them the world. And the messages you give them, the scripts you give them, the ideas, experiences you give them, is going to be what they take forward. So it's helpful to try and get it right as it's happening. So that's about, which is going to be really, really hard, but that's about communication. That's about respecting and valuing each other for the sake of the children. So when you're thinking about divorce, before you even get to contemplate making it a legal process, you have to start thinking, talking, sharing about how you're going to do that together in order for the children not to have to take sides. Because that's what they do. They take sides. And they naturally take sides, and they naturally generate to the one that they believe is most emotionally hurt or hurting. And that's why you find children taking those stances, because they believe one of their parents is hurting more than the other. And they will gravitate towards that person. They'll want to spend more time with that person, which I know is not fair. If you're both parents and you both love your kids, which most parents do, then you want to spend more time with them, but they will wait and they will shake and they will move that process for you. So at the beginning, when even the contemplation means it might happen, start having conversations with each other that are respectful and valuing for the sake of that split on effect on the children. The first thing you need to do is think about how you're going to make that happen. In all this turmoil that's going on, usually, how are we going to find space and time to do that? Are you all want to spend time with the other person? Obviously, because they're usually doing something you don't want to do, certainly for the person that's being left, so to speak. But you have to find space and time to do it for the sake of the children. It's not about you two anymore. It's not about what's happened to you two anymore. It's about how you two now affect those people. And hopefully you both love and care about them. So that's the reason why the work as a couple counsellor changes, and why we emphasise for the sake of the children. So when you're moving through that process, the conversations you have to have is, how is what we next do, the next step, going to inform them? What are they going to take from it? How are they going to work with it? So at every point in that process, before anything happens, they need to be aware. They need to know beforehand of any changes, any situations that's going to affect them of change. If you can do that, then you'll make this process, this journey, a lot easier for everybody, including you, because the less they have the behavioural conflict, the less that's going to affect you. So thinking about, okay, how do we tell the kids? What do we tell the kids? The kids need to know everything ahead of it happening, because if we create a change that we're not aware of, then the other person will feel very insecure because they didn't see it coming. They hadn't had a chance to think about it, had a chance to kind of get an idea of it, what it might be like. Their questions haven't been answered. So if suddenly one day you just say, right, I'm leaving, and you take the kids with you, and that might be because that has to happen. You know, sometimes domestic violence is occurring and the kids and the adult have to leave. That's the worst case scenario. But in most cases, it's about making an effective, amicable separation. So when we're moving through that process, identify how this affect change is going to be seen by those people. So you might think, okay, so nothing's going to happen now. We're going to wait until it happens. Not usually a good idea. You'll find they do challenge you on that process. So preempting things is a good idea. Even after you've separated and divorced, don't make any changes without the children being informed. They don't need to know the whys and the wherefores. They don't need to know the reasons for it. They don't need to go into those kind of processes. That's not the conversation you should have with them. So blame is not a good idea to put into the kids' heads, that one partner is the blame, one partner is the problem, because they love that other person. And you used to, presumably, because you were together with them. So it's not about taking your angst out in those places. It's about holding that and being the responsible adult with those people. Moving forward, at every step of that disengagement process is hard to keep that focus. It is, naturally. And we all get it wrong. Everybody gets it wrong. But we learn by that, hopefully, and we put it right, and we apologise, and we say sorry, and we give our responsibility to those people and said, this is something I did and I'm not happy about it, and I don't feel comfortable with it, and I ain't going to do it again, basically. So when you're talking about that to the children, they don't need to know the reasons why, the wherefores, why the relationship broke down, what happened, because that will only make them take sides even more, because one person is the guilty person. And that's not something that you want to give your kids, to be fair. So talking about how the split occurs, when it occurs, what's the process of it, where they're going to be, what they're going to do, how it's going to work for them is the most important thing. And as I said, that's not easy to do while you're still in pain and suffering. But you have to do that for their benefit. You know, those kind of painful moments have to be out of eyeshot of them. It has to be done somewhere where they cannot hear it or see it. And there's going to be those painful moments, which is why the counselling room is a good place to do it, to get those ideas, those understandings out, because we can help being the third party in that room. We can help you understand, we can help you make some informed choices instead of reactionary choices. Reaction choices are never ever good. They aren't, unless it's health and safety. Reaction choices are done through an emotional process. We react emotionally. We need to make informed choices, planned choices, in order to help those people come to terms with this change, as I've said, that they're not in charge of, and they don't really want, and they're going to react to in any case. Even if you make it the best amicable separation possible, they're still going to react. And the process that they engage with is the one that you give them, always. So have conversations, have discussions about what is the next step, what is the next process before it happens. Give them information that is suitable, and different ages will need different types of information. Nobody will be able to take it in, so it has to be age appropriate. There's a lot of literature on separation and divorce nowadays, books that the kids can read and that you can read with them if they're younger children, to kind of help them cope with this process of change. So if, for example, you've made the choice to separate, then it will be a really good idea, once you know that's the choice, to then give that information together to the children. Not one parent or the other. Together. And the reason why I say that is because if they get a uniformed understanding of what's going on, then they won't challenge you individually. If one parent gives them the information, then pretty much they're going to go to the other parent and say, what's this going on? What's happening? This is what I've been told. And that puts the other parent in a situation where they have to kind of do reactions, and it's not been planned. So informed processes are much better. So whatever message you're giving to the kids of any change, even once you've started the process, there might be another change that's about, I don't know, a holiday you've booked. The kids will say, well, are we going on the holiday? Who's going on the holiday? Where are we going on the holiday? So anything that changes in any way that affects them, they need to be aware of it beforehand. And that's down to the parents to be responsible, to do properly for the benefit of them. So if you have that conversation together and you have an agreed process that you're going to give to them, not one person saying this is what I'm going to tell them and you have to put up with it, that won't work. So you agree the process, you agree the information, and then both of you together give it to the children, and give it to all at the same time, and don't have separate meetings with separate kids unless you have to. Try to give them it together and say, not from an emotional response process, which is not going to be easy, that's going to be hard, what you've both agreed the next step is going to be. The kids then will be shocked, obviously, unless they saw it coming. Usually they do. Be surprised how many couples say to me, we never argue in front of the kids. They don't know we're having problems. Yes, they do. Sorry. We pick things up in all sorts of different ways, from the environment, from energy, from facial features, from changes. They're not spending time together anymore. They're not cooking meals the way they used to. All these kind of subtle changes of time and interactions give them clues, and they're going to make their own ideas up from those clues. And that's not a good idea, because that'll use their imagination and other experiential processes to understand what's going on. So give them the information there and then. Make it so that they feel comfortable with that process as much as possible. So they're never going to be fully comfortable with it. How it's going to affect them. What is going to change in their lives? How is it going to be changed? They'll want to go further forward than you're probably doing at that moment. So you might be talking about, I don't know, this is the time we're going to separate. Then the kids will be thinking, okay, where we're going to go to school. What about our friends? What about our connections? What about family? Are we going to see grandma and granddad again? Are we going to see uncles and aunties again? They're going to have a range of things that they feel very close to, and people they feel close to, and how that's going to be affected. Now, hopefully, if you can do an amicable separation, then no other third party, grandmas, granddads, uncles, aunts, relationships need to be affected. They will have their own view of what you're doing and their own view of what you should do, usually, and definitely give you those views, usually. But it's not down to them. But if your parents, don't feel as though they need to come to support you, to fight your battles for you because this other person's done this, that, or the other. And they can see that what you're trying to do is the benefit of their grandkids, to make it as good as you can for them. Most people can suck it up. Most people can not have to interact with the process. But if they see their loved one hurting, they're naturally going to want to come to their side and their aid and fight their battles with them. And then it gets very messy. The process of divorce has changed legally, in a sense now, this year. There doesn't have to be a fault or a blame. That used to be the case. Somebody needed to have done something. Had an affair, defrauded something, whatever. There had to be a reason for the divorce that was blame. Nowadays we don't, thankfully. And I say thankfully because for the benefit of the kids, usually. Because lots of messy fights used to be done in family courts about things, arguments, who did what to who and when. And it got very conflict orientated. Solicitors used to be involved, obviously, although you never needed a solicitor to get divorced, but most people thought they did. And then they'd be fighting for their client, quite naturally, how much they could get from them, what process they could get in this separation, this split. Nowadays it's different because there's no fault, no blame. So anybody can separate from anybody else legally, which, for the benefit of the families is a really, really good idea in my world. So from that point of view, you don't need to have a reason to divorce nowadays. So when you're talking about the changes and the ideas of change and what the outcomes of those changes are going to be for the kids and those meetings that you're going to have with them, I would suggest you have them fairly often, fairly regular. Even if nothing's changed, still have a meeting and check in how they feel, where they are, what's going on for them, any questions they may have, obviously. And if they do have questions of you individually, which they will do when they spend time with you, then try to give the other partner an understanding of what that encounter was, what the queries were, what the fears were, worries were, and what you were talking about, so that when those children go back to the other partner, then you've got an idea of what has been said and what outcome's being given. So you're both speaking really as much as possible with one voice. The children don't get different voices, different ideas, different reasons. They get one voice, and that voice means they can cope. Most kids are quite resilient, to be fair. They've gone through loads of changes in their lives already as a person. So most kids are resilient, as long as they don't know they need to support one parent or the other, and then they're usually okay. So when you're going through that process, regular meetings, certainly if something's going to change, as soon as possible that you know about that change, you should be impacting that information onto those people that you love and you care about. Try not to do any fighting in front of them, verbally or physically. Try not to have any outbursts. If you need to have those, then have them away from the home, not in the home. As I say, you'd be surprised how many parents say, my kids never know we're fighting. They will do. They will know. Believe me, they will know. So if there is any disturbance needed to be done, then find a couple counsellor, because that's where those things can be ironed out. Or find a coffee shop that's pretty quiet and you can have those kind of discussions. Or just in the car, both of you, sat in a car park. Somewhere where it's away from other people, away from disturbances, so neither one of you will feel guilty or shameful or, upset or anything about people being aware of it. When we're going into the actual separation, or the legal process, if you like, then that, generally speaking, doesn't necessarily have to take an awful lot of time. It can go fairly quickly nowadays, dependent on situations and how much you've got and how much needs to be split and what kind of details, what kind of agreements you have to have. So as you're going through that, the person who's activated that separation, the person who said, I've had enough, whatever, they kind of come to us an understanding. That person is going to be the one that drives it usually, more so, certainly in the initial stages. The other person, who really didn't have a choice, it's just something they're going to have to put up with, is going to be less happy. The one that's driving it has usually been thinking about it for an awful long time. It's not usually an instant decision. So they've had time to come to terms with this process, their choice, their decision. The other person hasn't. And so it's going to be probably a shock to them. Even if many times before you've said, I'm going to leave. Usually when you do leave, or you do separate, it is a shock still. So they're going to be probably more hurt or upset. And they probably want to fight more, want to get their voice heard more because they didn't have a choice. So it's really helpful if you can listen to that voice, which I know will be emotionally charged, obviously. But if you can listen to it, if you can understand, it's their reaction to this change. It's their reaction to insecurity. It's their reaction to what may or may not happen next. And can they trust what you were saying? Can they trust what you're going to do? Because they did trust you to be in this relationship, but now you're ending it. So the trust will be really, really hard for them to come to terms with. And you're going to, the person that's driving it, you're going to have to listen to some of that. And that's hard when you're making a choice because you don't have any choice. And somebody's really having a go at you for making that choice. You're going to want to come back with arguments and blame and counter arguments and tit for tat, if you like. If you made the choice, you made the choice. Why you've made the choice is not necessarily needed, but you've made a choice. And the other person didn't have a choice. So you do have to kind of hold your emotions, hold attacking verbally, blaming. When you're doing that, don't bring other people, other family members, other friends, other colleagues, whatever, into that process. This is about you two. This isn't about anybody else. Because if you bring other people in to try and support you, try and bring that process, while you're emotionally charged, then the likelihood is they're going to start wanting to get involved, give you ideas, give you information. This is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. And they can create some disturbance with that, which will come back into the couple, naturally. So it's best that the couple decide, the couple agree, and the couple then give it to the kids. So once you've given those messages to the kids, once you've had those family meetings of the change that's going to occur, then it's best also for the closest people that those kids connect to, grandparents, your sisters or brothers, aunties, uncles, siblings of them, to give those people ideas of what's going on as well. So that the kids, when they talk to those people, they don't get different ideas, they don't get different views, different situation scenarios. They kind of look at it and they can get one voice again. It won't be the same voice, obviously, it'll be different. But if it's got the same ideas in the voice, it will give the kids that security of knowledge, of knowing that they are being informed and they know what's going on. It's never an easy time, as I've said. But if you can try to make it as easy as possible, amicable as possible, then the less fallout in future years you will have. So say you've gone through that divorce, separation process, and you've come to a point where you're both separated, spending time with the kids separately. People often ask me, is it a good idea to spend time as a family, i.e. the two parents with the kids? And generally speaking, I would say yes. I don't mean maybe holidays, long periods of time together, but maybe, when the young people are having birthdays or, celebrations of some sort, Christmas, that you kind of get together as a family to have some kind of meal, some kind of interactive process where all of you are together, if you can. I don't mean every week, every month, but every so often, just so that they can see that the continuity of what's been said is what is actually happening, because they will only see that when you're both together. They'll see when you're both together whether or not you really do tolerate each other, whether you do respect and value each other. And it's a good idea that they can see that. They can see that process, because then when they have relationships, when they grow forward, then they can see that actually, sometimes relationships end, but it doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to be a World War III process. We can do that, and we still can be friends and still can be connected. Because those young people, they're going to have situations in their life. They're maybe going to have, plays at school. They're going to have achievements. They're going to have maybe university. They're going to have maybe engagements and weddings. All those things are going to happen. And you two need to be able to be in the same room as each other, respect and value each other for the benefit of the children. Because it's not their fault that you two decided to split. It's not their fault that they've been put in this position. They're the fallout. They're the things that are going to, unfortunately, keep with them for the rest of their lives. Bear that in mind when you think about these things. That whatever you do, it's going to affect them in some way, shape or form. Kids react one of two ways usually. Well, all human beings react one of two ways usually. We either internalise, we take our emotions and bury them, or we externalise. You'll know the difference. Externalise straight away. You say something to an externaliser, you get it straight back. The bullet between the kind of forehead, between the eyes. They will just rant at you as whatever you've said to them. If they're not happy, you will know it. Internalisers not. They dwell on it. They take it in. They think about it. They produce their own processes with it. The reason why that's important is when children are being affected by separation and divorce, is that if you know whether or not you've got an internaliser or an externaliser, because an internaliser will go quiet. They won't really say much. They'll think an awful lot, but they won't say much. So they bury their emotions. Now it's a bit like, a volcano. They're burying their emotions, and there's only a point where the emotions can be buried. Then it erupts like a volcano. And you get outbursts of behaviour over really trivial, silly, stupid things that usually would not create conflict. So it might be, you've not given them the tea in the way that they wanted it. The sausages aren't cooked correctly. Whatever. Something small. Then they'll have a massive outburst. You've got an internaliser. When the outburst is not in relation to the situation, you've got an internaliser. As a counsellor, I work with young people. I am more worried about quiet young people than explosive young people. Explosive young people I get, I understand, I can see, I can hear, I can get some interactive process of understanding. Quiet ones, no. If your child is normally a very interactive, responsive child, and you're going through separation, divorce, and they suddenly change to be an internaliser, then you need to be worried. You need to connect. You need to talk. You need to go to them. I know they're not giving you grief. I know they're being quiet in the room, on the radio, on their iPad, on their interactive games, whatever it is. But still talk to them. Don't think because they're quiet, they're all right. Usually that's not the case with these situations. They're usually not able to talk about what they're feeling, what they're thinking. And that will, unfortunately, come out somewhere in the future. And I don't think any parent I've ever worked with, when I've said about for the benefit of the children, have said that they don't care about their kids. I've never heard anybody say that yet. Every single one of them wants to do the best for their kids, thankfully. So it's about putting your own differences apart and aside, and it's about working with that process for them, for the benefit of the kids. That's the focus. So we have to keep in your mind in here. This is for the benefit of the kids. No matter what I'm feeling, no matter what I'm thinking, what's happening to me, I have to be the responsible adult. I don't want to be the child. As you move forward, whatever changes occur, as I've said, always inform the kids prior to the change. Always have conversations. Keep the lines of communication open, not through a solicitor or through a legal body. Try and keep it in the way it should be. You and them talking, sharing, for the children's sake. Not about the relationship, not about you, not about the problems you'd had or are having. Everything that affects the kids should be the thing that's being talked about. And then hopefully, even though it's a massive change, it is a massive change for everybody, then at least you'll have something that resembles some security, some platform that the kids can anchor to. And some kids will feel that the separation divorce is a great, exciting time. I'm going to have 2 bedrooms. I'm going to have 2 houses. I'm going to have all these kind of things, which they will have. So for some, it's very exciting. But also when they're in those places, they will miss the other partner, the other parent. Yeah. And thinking for the future, if you want to connect with another person in a relationship, a new partner, always a good idea that you have conversations together first. If it's got to a point where somebody's becoming a new partner, maybe not be moving in or sharing, but they are becoming closer, they're becoming more committed, you need to have a conversation together, because the kids will be affected by that. They will not know what to do. And they'll want to see that new partner, if their mum or their dad is accepting that person, then they'll want to see you're accepting them as well. And that is definitely not easy. But again, it's for the benefit of the kids. So they can see no difference, no one person being hurt. Because they will gravitate towards the one they believe is being hurt the most. And then you'll get a reaction, which will be helpful for anybody, including the new partner. Because they will try and push that new partner out. They will make it really difficult for you to have that relationship. Usually, they will react to that new man or woman being brought into their life and being their new parental figure. Who's going to tell them what to do? Who's going to chastise them? Who's going to tell them off? Those are really hard things to kind of get your head around sometimes. So if you are having a new partner, new relationship, then please, before you get into that, please have a conversation with your ex-partner so that you both can give that information to the kids so that they can see that they don't have to take sides. It's always about not having to take sides. The kids not being the responsible people who have to make the decisions. Don't give them that. Don't give them that responsibility. It's not fair. It's not right. You've made a choice and decision. It's not theirs to support it or not support it. It's theirs to be able to connect to both parents and be able to love both parents still. And not see either parent as a bad person. They may have done something that was not nice. They may have been doing something that was disrespectful. They may do that, but that's to you, that's not to their kids. So you need to find a way of doing that. Find a way of showing that process to the kids. Hopefully that's been helpful to you. Hopefully you've taken some ideas of how this process might be easier for the benefit of the kids. You probably won't be able to do that on your own. You probably will need external help. And if you do, then find a couple counsellor. Couple counsellors are different to individual counsellors. They are. We are a different breed. There's a different process of skills, different ways of interacting. It's not the same as individual counselling. It's a totally different format, and we need to train to be a couple counsellor because of that. So if you do have to and want to connect to, make sure the couple counsellor is somebody who is adequately trained and experienced to do the work. Don't just believe any counsellor can be a couple counsellor, because they can't. It is completely different way of working. And then you can maybe have that non-judgmental, somebody who won't take sides, who will just be there to help you steer through this horrible journey for the benefit of your children. My name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Take care. Enjoy.